But another legitimate question today is to talk about the nature of God. Because there are a lot of people that say, well, God's not good. If you look at the evil and you look at the suffering in the world today, you can make a logical argument that if God was really good, He wouldn't allow all this suffering. And if He was all-powerful, He would not allow all this suffering. And the very fact that there is so much pain and suffering and death in this universe proves to some people that God is not good. And so I would like to address that for a few minutes today. First thing I want to do is divide the definition of suffering up into two separate categories. There is one category that you can list as natural suffering. This is what happens when a person gets killed in a car wreck, or somebody's killed in a tornado or a hurricane, and there's just no reason for it, and you look at it and you say, well, that's not fair. You can't blame anybody except the hurricane, and so many people blame God for things such as that. Why did you set up a universe where something like that could happen? The second category is the idea of malevolence. It is the idea of evil. And you look around the world and you see death, you see murder, you see rape, you see death on a large scale through wars. You see people doing bad things to other people. And you think, God, if there was a good God, how could He allow something like that to take place? Why didn't He stop that? And so I want to give you an argument, I want to give you a reason. It may not be your reason, and it may not be, certainly not the only reason. But it is a reason that works for me. First and foremost, if you think that I'm just not going to believe in a God like that, and you choose atheism, you've lost your argument altogether. Because if there is no God, there is no such thing as right and wrong. There is no such thing as justice and injustice. There is no such thing as fair and being unfair. Because if there is no God, then everybody becomes their own God, and I can do what I want to do if I can get away with it. And so, if that's what you believe, you cannot look down on Hitler, who killed millions of people. You cannot judge Stalin, who killed tens of millions of people, or Mao Zedong, who killed tens of millions of people, because they were doing what they thought was right for them. They were following their own morals and their own ethics. And so, if there is no God, anything is possible, and everything is possible. So let's say, well, I do believe in a God, but I don't believe He's good because He allows all this suffering. I would submit to you that if there is a Creator, you might need to look at why He created us. Many of us make the assumption that we were created just to have a good time, that's why I'm here. And you would be wrong in that assumption. If there is a God, I need to try to find out why I was created. And the verse I want to use today is John 17:3. It is a prayer that Jesus prayed before He was crucified. And I want to use one verse out of this prayer. There are many similar verses that back my point up, but I'll use this one. He said, and this is life eternal. And what was Jesus saying? He is saying this is why you were created. This is why you are here. And this is one of the great metaphysical questions, maybe the great metaphysical questions. Why was I created? If there is a God, why did He create me? And Jesus said, and this is life eternal, that they may know Thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom You have sent. So what is He saying? He is saying that it's all about relationship. You were created to have a relationship with God. You were created to know God, and He wants to know you. So if that was the purpose of creation, what kind of world would you create? And let me give you a couple of possibilities. Because He could have created a world to where everyone had no choice, to where you had to love Him. But you know, He did create a world like that. It is the animal kingdom. And many of you have relationships with animals that are very good. Probably the best example to use would be dogs. Those of you that have dogs. You can have a good relationship with a dog. A dog can show you love. A dog can show happiness. A dog can show joy. There are many emotions that a dog can have. But the idea is, sooner or later, you need to understand that a dog is pre-programmed to love you. That is because of instinct that he is that way. And so God did create that kind of universe. But for true love to exist, there has to be real choice. And for real choice to exist, you have to have free will. And so for God to have a real relationship with you, a relationship based on choice, there has to be a real choice. And so if you have a choice to have a relationship with God, you have to have a choice not to have a relationship with God. If you have a choice of walking in the light, you have to have a real choice of walking in darkness. If you have a choice to walk and follow what is good, you have to have a real choice to be able to follow what is not good, what we would term evil. And so that is the world that He created. It is a world where you have choice. It is a world where you have free will. But it is the only world where love could really exist. And you need to understand that. Because as God created a world that gave you free choice, that gave you free will, it takes that kind of world before you can have a relationship based on love. And so this is the only type of world that could exist where love can exist. But in making this kind of world where love can exist, where relationships based on love can exist, He had to create a world where the possibility of rejection can also exist. And so in creating a world where love is possible, He also created a world where evil is possible. But understand this. The evil that you see in this world, the suffering that you see in this world, the death that you see in this world does not come from God. It comes from you. It comes from the choices that men make. The choice not to walk in fellowship with God, but to walk against Him. The choice not to walk in fellowship of light, but to walk in fellowship of darkness. The choice not to be good, but to be evil. He created the possibility, but it is mankind that makes the choices. And so when you look at this world, and you see the suffering and the pain and the death, do not make the assumption that that comes from God. The possibility comes from God. But all the sin, all the suffering, all the pain, all the death that you see in this world comes from the choices that man makes. And as you know and I know, man has made some horrific choices down through history. And those choices affect everyone. And so I would ask you at those times in your life when you're sitting there and you're thinking, how could God allow this? The only possibility of having a world where you can choose to have a relationship with God is to have a world where you can choose not to have a relationship with God. And in many ways, it's a hell of a world. Because mankind, through his choices, has literally made hell on earth. And you might be one of the ones to suffer because of somebody else's choices. But don't blame God. Don't blame God.